Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of The Bullet. My name is Paul Lathrop. I'm the Deputy Director of New Media for the Second Amendment Foundation. Joining me today from upstate New York, not down in the city, but Dan Wos is joining us. Of course, he's the author of the Good Gun, Bad Guy series of books, and he has his own also on the weekend radio show that goes out. And I do encourage you to listen to the open mic. Dan, thanks for coming along for the ride today, man.
Well, thanks for having me, Paul. It's always great talking to you about this stuff.
Well, let's get started with New York. You are a New York guy. Any developments there? Anything going on with the Concealed Carry Improvement Act?
Well, there are 4 or 5 different pending lawsuits that are critical to the Concealed Carry Improvement Act, if you want to call it that. But that's what it's called, and of course they use the language to make it sound like it's good, but it's actually a horrible package of gun laws. So anyway, there are about 5 lawsuits right now. They're kind of in a holding state at the moment, waiting for higher court to see the cases, and the Hochul and her gun law have been shot down now by state Supreme Court justices about 5 times, and they told her that the gun law package of gun laws is unconstitutional, and she's been told this 4 or 5 times now. So we're in a process now where I think the next court has to see this, and I think it's about time for the Supreme Court to just kind of reach down and grab these cases and hear them. So we're in a state of confusion at the moment, where everything's kind of in limbo. The laws have been deemed unconstitutional, yet I guess they're still somewhat in effect. So it's really a troubling time for New York gun owners.
Well, and I'm hoping that it's sooner than later that the Supreme Court gets this. Earlier this year they said no, we're not going to hear it right now. We're going to let it go through just a second here, because my audio is a little low. I'm going to try and there we go. Let's see if that works. And my understanding is they're going to. They sent it back to the Second Circuit, and they said, look, don't drag your feet on this. Get moving, but we're looking, we're watching, and we'll see. Laws it never on our side goes as fast as we want it to. So
no, I know, and I think these gun grabbing governors and legislatures, they know that. They know it's going to take a long time to get these things through the court system. They know they're going to get defeated, but they play the game because I guess because they want to maybe flex their legislative muscle, or just punish gun owners and conservatives. So, but they ultimately will get defeated.
And look at it. Yes, ultimately we are going to win. There's very little doubt there. But they also, New York, compared to GOA, compared to SAF, compared to Firearms Policy Coalition, they have an unlimited budget. They really do when it comes to defending those laws.
Yeah.
So they can afford to throw up a really bad law, wait for us to play whack-a-mole, hammer that down, then they'll throw up another law that's just slightly less bad, and we'll have to play whack-a-mole again and knock that one down.
Yeah, exactly. Go ahead.
Let's go ahead and let's move on to the stories of the day. First one that came to my attention is Columbus. On Monday, Columbus, Ohio, the city council passed legislation that gives gun owners who have magazines of 30 rounds or more until July 1st to move them out of the city, sell them to a licensed arms dealer outside Columbus, or turn them over to the city division of police. According to the December 5th legislation, anyone possessing a magazine that can hold 30 or more rounds would be charged with a misdemeanor with a mandatory 180 consecutive days in jail without work release with a potential sentence of up to 1 year and a $1,500 fine.
Yeah.
Dan, I'm going to put this up in the comments section, but you actually wrote about this when the city council originally was starting this process to make this city regulation, and the state had something to say about it.
Yeah, the state is actually suing the city. And I wrote this article back in December about this when this thing first started. Um, in their argument, of course, the city used all the typical anti-gun rhetoric and terminology, like armed gunmen, mass shooting, gun violence, common sense gun control, all that stuff. And the city claimed that so-called gun violence has ripped through their communities and gun control simply can't wait. But what happened was the state, well, like I say in the article, the new case against the city of Columbus seeking a temporary restraining order and a motion for a preliminary injunction asked the court to recognize, and this is the best part, the state asked the court to recognize the Supreme Court's recently noting in the Bruin decision that, quote, the government must affirmatively prove that its firearms regulation is part of the historical tradition that delimits the outer bounds of the right to keep and bear arms, end quote. That's the famous quote in the decision by Judge Clarence Thomas that includes a historical tradition piece. So the state, as far as last I know, was suing the city to prevent the city from implementing this law on their own citizens, turning them into felons, all based on the Bruin case's historical tradition comment.
Before we move on to our next story, I want to get a comment in here. This is going to take us a little bit of a left turn, but 500 Magnum says Lightfoot is gone. That's awesome for Illinois. More specifically, that's awesome for Chicago. 500 Magnum. Rob and I talked about this last night as we were doing the bullet, but voting was still going on. I stated then that I thought she might be on shaky ground, even though Chicago is the bluest of blue. I thought she might be on her way out because things are just so bad there.
You know what's funny about this, Paul, is hysterical. She blamed her loss on, wait for it, racism.
Yep.
Somehow racism caused her to lose her seat as
Despite
mayor.
the fact, one of the two guys that is going up for they've got two guys that are going up for the runoff in April, and one of them is black, and yet because and it was still racism that defeated her.
Well, and not only that, the same people who voted for her last time, who voted her in, have decided not to vote for her and voted her out. What happened to those people? In the course of her term, did they all of a sudden become racists?
I think in the course of her term, most of them got mugged.
Yeah, exactly, right. That's funny. Yeah, that's what it's foolish. They're foolish. So anyway, move on from that nonsense.
Yeah, well, we're going to stay in Illinois though because with 4 federal lawsuits consolidated, a schedule of responses and oral arguments set, the Illinois Sheriff's Association is officially taking sides in the case against the state's gun ban. Reading a little bit more into this story, FWREG.com, Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker enacted a gun and magazine ban January 10th. Residents are not allowed to purchase any of the more than 170 different semi-automatic firearms and magazines over a certain capacity. Since before being enacted by the governor, the measure has been opposed by sheriffs from both sides of the aisle. Dozens of sheriffs have said they won't enforce it. This quote, then I'm going to get to this quote, and then we'll leave the story. Many sheriffs across the state indicated their concern about the legislation passing and ultimately being signed into law and infringing on the rights of those legal gun owners across the state. That was Illinois Sheriff's Association Jim Katechuk told the Center Square. What the organization did is we filed an amicus brief in support of those efforts, challenging House Bill 5471. If you lose all but 2 sheriffs in the state, I think you've lost. What do you think, man?
Yeah, are you reading from my article? Because I just wrote an article on this in AmmoLand, dated February 8th.
This is off a story this morning on WREG.com. That's where I got it.
Okay. The interesting thing that I found when I was writing about this was that although the restraining order is good news now, because the restraining order against it, there's the much better news is that Pritzker and his gun-grabbing crew they didn't expect this, but it seems that there was a direct correlation as a direct correlation to the law. Rifle sales increased by 10 times from what they were over the past year, and handgun sales doubled, according to the Chicago Sun-Times. And if that wasn't enough of a kick in the pants to the Illinois gun grabbers, sheriffs across the state, like you said, have publicly stated that they refuse to enforce the law. So in a fit of rage, and typical of a child not getting their way, Pritzker threatened to fire them for aligning with the court and the Constitution.
You know, going back all the way to the beginning of the Obama administration, that seems to be a theme. When and I'm just going to say liberals, not all liberals, but when elected liberal legislators do not get their way, they will immediately throw a hissy fit and punish everyone.
Yeah.
Pritzker's doing it now. Where I originally got it from was when the Obama administration had to rein in the budget because a Republican House and Senate sent them a budget they had to sign, but it was a lot less than the Obama administration wanted. All of a sudden, well, we're not doing flyovers over NASCAR races because it's not in the budget anymore. We're not opening the national parks anymore because that's not in the budget. Yeah. And Pritzker, this is just him doing the same thing.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah.
Next story we got is out of Tennessee. This one off of BearingArms.com. It's a Cam Edwards story. 2 bills weaving their way through the legislature could open or expand open carry for assault weapons, and I hate that he used that term, or long guns and allow 18-year-olds to openly carry them. The first would change the term handgun, where it appears to be in the Tennessee Code, to firearm. According to the Department of Safety and Homeland Security, legislative liaison Elizabeth Stroker said it would allow anyone to carry an assault rifle, such as an AR-15 or AK-47, anywhere in public, as long as they weren't facing any restrictions like a felony on their record. Would this allow any individual to carry an AK-47 outside this building, up and down Broadway, said Representative Bill Beck in a subcommittee meeting. Am I reading that correctly? Yes, sir, she replied. In addition, another bill would change the minimum age for open carry to 18 years old. Currently, it's 21, and I said that wrong. The next story is from Bearing Arms, not this one. This is
I'm surprised that Bearing Arms would use the term assault weapon, so I'm glad it wasn't them, because we know people from Bearing Arms, they wouldn't talk like that.
No.
Yeah. So what this is saying here, it sounds like this. They're saying this would allow any individual to carry an AK-47 outside the building up and down Broadway. You know, they dramatize. Am I reading that correctly? And they said yes. Stroker replied. Well, see, here's the thing. That type of rhetoric is to scare people into thinking that this is so ridiculous that someone could be carrying a gun in public. I personally, I don't see anything unusual or wrong about that. We should, but they're so conditioned now to think that a gun in public is so taboo and so wrong and so dangerous that they can't comprehend it anymore. That's what's happened to our society. Guns have become so criminalized that people don't know how to accept them anymore in society, and I think that's part of the plan.
I am, in my personal life, I do not open carry often at all. I think it's tactically a bad decision. However, I believe you ought to be able to do it. I don't think there should be any legal reason you cannot do it. I believe it's your right. It's just I'll put it this way: just because you can doesn't mean you should. Because if you are carrying a long gun, it does not matter the long gun. You're going to alarm people. You're going to get police attention.
And that's what I mean. In today's society, you're definitely going to alarm people. But think back to maybe the early, 20s, the 30s, the 40s. That would be a different thing. People were not, even back in the 70s when I was a little kid, even in the 80s when I was in school, in high school, people would have rifles in the back of their pickup truck window and dead animals in the pickup truck bed. It was normal in the school parking lot. Friends, high school friends would have this stuff, and nobody thought anything of it.
When I went to high school, same kind of thing. The pickups were not 80s pickups. I mean, we couldn't afford brand new pickups, of course. I don't know many high schoolers now that on their own could afford a brand new car. But I remember my pickup back then was a 1967 Chevy. And it had a rifle rack in the back. Sometimes it had a rifle in it. Sometimes it had a fishing pole in it because I liked to go fishing when I got done with school. Occasionally in the wintertime, it was sometimes a rifle because I like to do some hunting. But that type of open carry, there's absolutely nothing wrong with. Where I have an issue with open carry, and I think it actually does some harm, is these jack wagons who grab...
Trying to make a point?
Yeah, who grab and they call it a 2A, what do they call it? A audit. They call it a Second Amendment audit, or sometimes a First Amendment audit. They'll strap on anything that will scare somebody, and they'll go downtown and they'll be obeying the law, but they know the police are going to come there, and as soon as the police start showing up, they start recording and try to egg the police on.
Right. I understand your position, definitely. Yeah, I don't think it's necessary to do that, but I do understand what they're trying to do is make the point, because I think a lot of people, in their defense, I think a lot of people are so frustrated with the gun laws, and a lot of people want to push back and sometimes choose maybe not the best way to push back, but they're trying to make a point that says, hey, we're tired of the gun laws. We can do this, and we're going to do it, and it comes from a place of defiance. I certainly understand defiance, but I agree with you. It may not be the best choice in all situations.
Let's get a couple comments in here because we do have some comments about this. Absolutely ridiculous! You can't carry an AK-47 down Broadway. That's 500 Magnum. And then my take says, open carry in hunting to and from, legal in Oregon for all. That's one of the few things you can do in Oregon. And they haven't got rid of yet. One more, two more. I got one from Mike White. I wouldn't open carry as no one needs to know what I have.
And that's a common position people take. Yes.
Absolutely. Final one about this topic that's come in so far, and my take says, never carry an open rifle in town, but would if I had to walk. Well, if you've got to get it from point A to point B, you got to get it, and if you don't have a vehicle,
And I suppose it also depends on what town you're in.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the little town I grew up in, with a population of 900, no big deal. Town I live in now, population a little over 200,000, different story. And wow, we are getting the comments coming in. Holy cow. I got to come over here because it's now way bigger than the little window I had. I want to get this one up. We're going to take a little bit of a left turn again. 500 Magnum says, I heard about California charging $1,000 and all kind of BS. That's not illegal, they'll tell you. Well, yeah, I seen a story. I think it was a Cam Edwards story where it was a community just to the west of Los Angeles. If you wanted to get a concealed carry permit, your total investment for a 2-year concealed carry permit, your total investment, not including firearm, not including ammunition, was $1,000. And then to renew it in 2 years, it was like $689. That's ridiculous, and that will get shot down.
Yeah, just the idea that they can charge you and create a government-issued permission slip and then charge you for it when our founding fathers said no. It just, the whole thing is preposterous.
And Clarence Thomas said no in his opinion. He said, there are some reasonable restrictions that may be allowed, but he specifically referred to outrageous fees that would not be tolerated. I wish I had that in front of me, but I don't. Where are we? I want to get this one in because that's interesting. Larry on the Facebook side, what about carrying a giant Bowie knife or sword? Both of which I own, by the way. I do carry the sword in costume when I go with my wife to do events for the Renaissance Fair. And here, not because I'm in costume, not a big deal. It is a real sword. It is really sharp, but nobody bats an eye because I'm in costume. I have a large Bowie knife, but I use that when I go fishing, and generally I'm armed anyway then, so. All right. Oh, I don't know who sent this, but I got to get this. Oh, Billy Cummings sent this one. Can we all just agree California is not an actual part of the U.S.? I'd be happy to give it back to Mexico. You know what? I'll even go with that. Give the residents of California 60 days notice. If you do not want to be a Mexican citizen, you got 60 days. Get out. Get to free America. I like that. All right, let's... don't know who sent this. No one bats an eye, speaking of me carrying a sword, because they're afraid. Yeah, I don't know about that. I usually got a big old smile on my face when I'm doing that. Let's go ahead and move on to our next story, man. San Jose. This one is a bearing arms story. This is a Cam Edwards story. San Jose's insurance mandate for gun owners is having some problems. Dan, I think you and I talked about this one late last year. San Jose's then mayor, Sam Liccardo, praised the unprecedented council actions to require gun insurance and to charge all gun owners a gun harm reduction fee as common sense solutions to reduce gun harm and to shift the financial burdens from taxpayers and victims back to gun owners. The ordinance was officially approved on a second read on February 8th, 2022, a little over a year ago. An original effective date of August 8th was pushed back to January 1st, 2023. Liccardo estimated the $25 fees would yield $1.3 million to be collected by a nonprofit foundation established to distribute all fee revenue to community-based programs focused on reducing gun violence.
Oh, God.
That revenue estimate was based on 100% participation of the city's estimated 52,000 gun-owning household. That's, by the way, 1 out of every 15 adults in the city. as of February 28th, 2 months after the law took effect, no gun fee money has been collected, period, and no gun owner has been fined for failure to obtain a gun insurance, according to the city manager's office.
Okay, so wait, so this is two things we're talking about. Correct me if I'm wrong. We're talking about required gun insurance plus a $25 fee for gun harm reduction or something?
Yeah.
Okay.
And neither one has a single person that has complied.
Well, good, good. The gun insurance is just to deter gun ownership, because think about if gun insurance was
and it doesn't
required.
exist. As far as I know, it does not exist.
Right. And if you did find a company that would provide it, you're talking about a company like maybe Lloyd's of London or something like that. Yeah. It would be so damn expensive, and they would have the market cornered. It would be a monopoly. You'd be paying thousands of dollars a month for this so-called, gun insurance. It would, if by the long shot chance that it was ever became a law, it would literally shut down. Well, I don't know if it would shut down on gun ownership, but that's the idea. So people would be deterred from owning guns because they just couldn't afford the insurance. That's all this is really about. It's not about protecting anybody or having funds available should someone get hurt in a crime. It's about making it impossible for gun owners to own guns.
Yeah, and now what I would say, none of these are insurance. They are private entities that protect their members. They're all membership organizations. Places like Armed Citizens Legal Defense Network, places like Texas Law, U.S. Law Shield, Texas Law Shield, things like
USCCA.
that. They do not qualify as insurance under that San Jose city ordinance. So.
And some of those companies aren't even allowed to insure gun owners in certain states.
Yeah, well, speaking of ACLDN, the only state, and I talked to Marty Hayes about this a while back, the only state ACLDN cannot provide memberships in is Washington State, believe it or not, even though they're Washington State based. All the rest of the country, including New Jersey, including New York, ACLDN, you can be a member.
Oh, really? Okay. I didn't know that, because I know USCCA cannot insure New York.
Well, ACLDN can. So let me get a comment up. I like this comment a lot. Big John 410 says, call it what it is, Jim Crow laws. Yeah. That's what that is. Speaking about the San Jose ordinance.
Mm-hmm.
All right, man. Well, let's do. We're down right. We're just about to the bottom of the hour. On our way out, please do as I ask you every time you're on. Plug your book series and plug your radio show if you would, man.
Okay. Well, thank you. The Good Gun Bad Guy book series is right over my shoulder. 3-book series talks about the anti-gun mindset. First, we get into that and explain the thought process of the anti-gun crowd so we can better understand them, so we can defeat them. Book 2 gets into the media's involvement. How does the media change the narrative around guns? And then Book 3 gets into the political aspect of it all. Why do they want an unarmed society? Book series has been a huge success. As far as I'm concerned, people are absolutely loving it, and it sells really well, and everybody seems to be very happy with the book series. So go to goodgunbadguy.com, goodgunbadguy.com. And then the Loaded Mike podcast and web show, you can find that at loadedmike.com, and we air live every Thursday night on OpsLens at 8 p.m. Eastern on OpsLens, so you can go to opslens.com for that. We're also on some other networks as well, Right America Media, Simul TV, and Key Radio Network out in Missouri. So loadedmike.com and goodgunbadguy.com.
Very, very cool. And I will say, if you are catching us on OpsLens, because OpsLens for this show is delayed, we record it live on, today is Wednesday. We're recording it live at 5 p.m. Central Time. If you're catching the OpsLens replay of this show, it'll happen Thursday at 11:30 a.m. Central Time. So come back to OpsLens if you're watching us on OpsLens at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Central Time, and you can catch Dan again. I think that's everything we needed to cover today, and we're down at the bottom of the hour. Thanks again, Dan.
You got it, man. Thanks for having me.
Everybody, if you are watching us live, come back in 30 minutes. We're going to have a Polite Society podcast we missed on Monday because I was on vacation, and we'll have that in about 30 minutes. Podcast listeners, it should release the same day you get this, so go check it out. Thanks again for everybody.